district and have witnessed kind of what we're trying to transform into. I believe that you're seeing the value. I'd like to think that. I certainly am getting good feedback. But the reality of it is it's a lot. It's a lot because the transition is difficult. And I've been going through that personally, just trying to keep pace and just do everything that we can system-wise and all of that. And then I'm also obviously running this. And I gotta tell you, like, Marie, agreed to come up and speak. And I have been miserable in terms of communication. And so I apologize to you. I really
Happy
do.
to be here.
But she has been so gracious, and I welcome you up if you could. Please.
Thank you.
Marie Young. I have to tell you, I've heard so many amazing things about you through the years, and
Not true.
very true. And it all starts with, I think, more so than anything, relationships. You have been somebody that I've seen, from kind of like the outside, looking in, so to speak, observing you. And you're just so great at building relationships in our industry. So I appreciate you, first of all, for being
Thank
who
you.
you are. I'd love to, I'm going to touch upon that in a little bit, but I'd really love to start with just understanding your background, a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I've lived in the whole tri-state area, which I think was a boon. Grew up in Park Slope, moved to Darien, Connecticut, probably the opposite of Park Slope. And here I am in Jersey, where people from New York usually have a love-hate relationship. And 20-something years later, I have no plans to leave. I love it here. Went to NYU, worked in the Trade Center, decided to go back to real estate after the tragedy, lost a lot of friends, and never looked back. And I just love where we live right now. Basking Ridge is, we've been through, on one hand, you couldn't count on all the things that happened here. And what I see is, I'm thinking of, your question sparked a lot. I was thinking of Hurricane Sandy, when it was a thrill to be able to tell people, you can get CNN on your phone. We're laughing. That was very forward, and we got to watch things that we couldn't. And the houses that put the outlets out so people could charge. I just went around taking a picture of that. And then there was the pandemic, and I came up one cold day up our street, and there was the flag at half-staff, and I was on my way to a 100th birthday party. This was 5 years ago, where the entire police department and over 200 cars came to wish this man a happy birthday. The police had the sirens, and it's like, happy birthday, young man. And I just couldn't get over. So it's always been, instead of being one of the whiners, either fix whatever you want to whine about, or just make the community a little happy. Catch random acts of kindness. How people will see, to the mother of the child by the bus. I did that one day, and I said, you're amazing because your son was waiting for his little sister to get on the bus. And it really does make people happy, and that's how you become part of the community.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, we're going to get into the production side of it in a few questions, but, what I'd like to just start with, I talked to you, start with relationships. So one of the things that I always find very interesting about you, and I've certainly known you through the years, but I don't think that you and I were like particularly close, like we talked all the time. But what I've seen and heard from so many agents is anytime I hear your name, it's always with a smile on their face. And that's the God's honest truth. It's always like, oh, Marie, like all good stuff. So doing as much production as you do, talk to us about like how you still maintain those relationships in real estate and how you've done such a great job just reputationally.
I think they really go hand in hand. For example, Maplewood, what I've been told, you guys always price things below knowing that they'll go higher. So we always price things before the pandemic higher with wiggle room. Now I noticed we're getting a lot of people from Jersey City, Maplewood. So we're not pricing higher because then they're going to say, well, we're already maxed out. Forget it if we have to add another 100,000 on. And then I just ran into John Bradley, who said the best way to win a bidding war is to be the listing agent. Well, so we changed our focus. And then there's Karen, who's just, we see her at Tom Ferry things, and just her organizational skills are to die for. So I'm the lucky one. And if somebody wants to know, is this house worth it in Basking Ridge, I'll give them what I consider to be my expert opinion, but now I'll remind them there are people out there that'll pay $6 million for a banana. So, you know, when these people advertise that they sold 20 offers in this, it's more like a hockey stick. For those houses that got 200 over, there were people in the Showtime feedback that said it's too high. And sellers don't know that, and I think we're not showing our value when we ignore those things. So the relationships, like Jennifer McManus asked me for things. Debbie Ripka, she's kind of like my idol, not only from knowing what's going on out there, but I had to go to New York for a Coldwell Banker thing, and in the train station, she treated the woman who served her coffee as if she were her long-lost sister, and I'm like, that's who I want to be. So everyone has that. So we're all the lucky ones. We're all enriched. I look at things like EXP where they don't have an office. Karen's on our team. We sit at one table all day long. And believe it or not, you're doing that? Have you tried this? We're all better because of each other. Yeah. So we're all the lucky ones if we communicate.
So, for those of you who don't really know Marie, I wanted to preface with kind of like the person you are, and I appreciate you going into what you just did, because now let's talk about the production side of it. Anytime that I sit down with somebody, and I know I'm going to get on stage and go through, I always try to do my research, and I know you've been super consistent through the years. But I looked up last year and the years before, and what I saw was like mind-blowing, and I'm just really impressed by you and your team. You did almost $90 million in volume last year. Wow. You sold about 76 homes. So I agree, that does deserve applause. And the majority of that is on the listing side. You do an amazing job of, Basking Ridge Real Estate, like you are Basking Ridge Real Estate, there's no question about it. So I'm just curious, there's so many people in here that would speak to last year and all the difficulties that went into the inventory game of last year, and you're clearly somebody who's doing it on a very high level. Speak to us about how you go out and you get listings. What does that look like to you?
Well, we were always blended, and then it was taking one person to see 10 houses on a Tuesday, and now it's taking 10 people to see the same house, and if you don't see it on Saturday or Sunday, you have to have your highest and best in Monday. So that changed the dynamic, and we just said, let's focus more on listings. We do have buyers, and a lot of what Zillow's giving are buyers, so we're not spending there. And we just kind of went out and are doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm not as consistent as I'd like to be, but if I walk outside the door, I see the garden club doing the thing. I'm going to take a picture of them, talk to them, and put it on. But make no mistake, too, it is from the heart, because I'm very impressed by what these people are doing. But that's how people do get to know you. And it's not only your own Instagram. Like, we have a thing called Basking Ridge Moms. And if you mess up on there, you really do have to move. Because
I can attest to that. I see that.
So I just said, I'm just, one of the Disney things, accentuate the positive. There's a lot of good things that go on, and I'm very grateful to be living where I am. So we just started posting those things, and when the pandemic started, I'm pretty good around Weebly. That night I stayed up all night with someone that was an intern. We built a website that had all the hospitals, all the drugstores, all the everything. Just click, just put it in, when are they open? But we linked to them. Again, because Karen White earlier in my career said, be the source of the source, but not the source. And people could just click away, and if the hours changed, it didn't have to be maintained. We did do this from our hearts, but it got people to know us. And I think once they know us, they were a little more apt to use it. Some may have run, but for those who didn't, we did well with them. But we also, I'm not as good with postcards and things. So I took the expensive but easy way out. Somerset Hills magazine came out. 6:30 in the morning, they said, we're having a new magazine. I called them and I said, I'll take the back cover, because I figured even if it's garbage, kind of like the connections I have from the mailbox to the trash can, I don't have to mail them. And I do all of my own ad copy, so it's mine and not a ChatGPT version. That got people to know us. And then I did some testing. Instead of saying, I have 20 million listings in this, and making people think, well, I guess you're too busy for me, or you don't want to do my condo, we started getting wordy on the back pages. I'll tell you what's a great thing in our area reports. This really does give you the branding that they have a lot of charts. And early in the year, those charts aren't really that good because, especially with a few houses on the market, they're kind of meaningless. But there was one, and the February one, I think they made a mistake, but there's one that has unsold price, sold, and ask. And if you show people the full year of last year for our town, here's the unsold, here's the sold, here's what they got. It's basically telling you, don't think you should do that. The other thing is to know the price. I'm getting a beautiful listing in Basking Ridge, and I sold the home next door. And they're not going to get the price of the home next door because that one had the pool, the Lac Cornu, kitchen, everything top of the line. But we were able to explain to him, if you look at your return on investment, you're going to win. And they brought up the value of your home. So I just think you have to know every home. Another thing we started when the pandemic started, and Karen has spent tireless hours, we did car behind car tours. And when we meet buyers, we tell them, okay, you called about this house. When they actually come out, the town looks totally different than what they thought. But we say to them, we don't want to sell you a house, and then you're going to go to a cocktail party 6 months and say, why didn't they show me that house? So we drive them through the neighborhoods in their range. We have a lot of subdivisions. We have an area called the Hills. And we're able to tell them from knowledge, well, they got this and they got that. And this works for sellers too. They only got that, but you have to realize they're on a cliff. This one has a flat yard. And then again, from connections with our agents, I've learned that in Summit, pools aren't the be-all and end-all. In Basking Ridge, a new listing comes up, and the town planner is like, you're the 90th call today, could we have a pool? Because they're so strict. So opening up, I really think the way to be the local expert is to really know your inventory, go to the broker opens. I had them changed in our town with a few other agents to be Thursday so that we could do coming soon Tuesday, save the date. Thursday is broker open, and then show the weekend, and studies have shown you'll get a higher price. And the other thing is agents are coming in and knocking Zillow. Well, if you're a seller or a buyer, that's probably your entree into real estate. And if you're going to knock the thing that they're relying 95% of their knowledge on, they're going to discount you. So, even the talk about the listings. So show how you can manipulate Zillow if you have to. And I just keep Premier Agent for $200 a month so I could go in and do things behind the scenes that you can't do otherwise. And the conversation this morning it really made me think, because one of the ways we get listings, and we go through the whole series of new forms with them, so we put a home on exclusive when we get it, just so that we're legally their realtor, but we don't allow showings. So they sign that form, and I said, next you're going to sign a form. The New York version of it is, if you're going to go exclusive, you're an idiot. And Coldwell Banker feels so strongly you're an idiot that we're making you sign this. But then we give them the next form that says, although I signed on exclusive, I've decided to go on the market. And we're like, that's your real date, and here's the coming soon date. But by the time we go through it, they are thrilled that we're going to give them an exposure. And then I have all the metrics. So are we trending on Zillow? Pick your best week. Put those on. Then I do a lot of work in Canva. So I have a drone that comes into people's houses, flies in the front door, eye level, no realtor gimmicks, goes up, goes out. That gets thousands of hits. And more than the hits, which mean nothing now, are the shares and saves. And that's where realtors are calling and saying, my clients saw it. But then when we run the ads, I have an ebook that we did in Canva. They click on the book, and now they see everything about the house. The whole book is interactive. And sellers are seeing that, and people are talking about it. And all our ad campaigns now are to say the real story lies between the just listed sign and the sold sign. And that's become our tagline for this year. What goes on in between? I mean, how many here have had people say, you know, when I hired you, I kind of thought I could do it myself, but if I knew everything that was involved, I would have started 10 years ago. So that's what we have to get across to
Rudy, I
sellers.
don't know what my question was, but I'm so glad I asked it.
Did I stray?
No, not at all. That was a master class. I got to tell you, I want to go back to a couple things, and I know I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I've been in real estate for 20 years, and I hear so many agents and brokers and gurus and everything like rip on Zillow, and then I hear you speaking of it as the tool you use and how you leverage it. And I gotta be honest with you, it's pretty brilliant. So I think that the thought process, and very few people say this, and that's why I'm highlighting it, the thought process that your clientele are going there first, and then they view that as valuable in their mind, and you just being in alignment with them on that, but then showing them where you add value beyond that is really something that's powerful. And so for everybody in the room, that's good stuff. So I really appreciate you saying that. You touched upon something in regards to like market reports and different tools. I mean, listen, you're such a classy person, and you really are. I mean, I keep going back to how horrible I've been as a host. So the reality is you've proven to me that you're that person in real life, and you do so much production, and yet you've been with Coldwell Banker for quite some time.
20 years.
20 years. And I think about that, and I love to ask this question because everybody has a different reason as to why they're with the brand, and I'm curious, what's your reasoning? Like, why have you remained where you are, and have been such a brand warrior for us?
We bought and sold our house in Connecticut with Coldwell Banker, and it was Schlott before or during. And Helen Hapgood was just like what I want to be when I grow up in real estate. She was just wonderful. And I remember coming from New York, I kept bringing her purse and telling her she left it in the car. Someone's going to steal it. And her finally going, look, we're not in New York anymore. You can put your purse away. But everything was, look at that. Gee, let's find out more about that wire. Let's look at this. Do you really like this house? This is a nice house, but if you want to have this, that house will never offer it. That, I thought, was a big sales thing, and she represented Coldwell Banker more than the woman when we looked in Greenwich, Ann Amadon, who I don't know what her story was. And then when I came here, I remember taking the test, and I thought some of the people taking the test were a little sketchy. They were talking about like raising their hands. What if there's an old lady and you could sell the house yourself? And then I came to Fast Start, which they had. Yeah. And everyone was dressed like you, and they were talking about it, and they were saying what they were going to do. And we stayed in touch with those people. And then the network here, the global luxury, the people who don't have walls and they're sitting at home in pajamas figuring out to sell, they're not going to get all this feedback. And when you work in a vacuum, you're not growing anymore. So Coldwell Banker right now is the place that offers that. Like, I'm honored to be here, and when you put this group on before me, I thought I should just go home now because
Not at all.
I mean that.
So, by the way, I'm not being rude. I'm actually looking at my questions here. So, when you and I had a conversation, like in prep for this, you talked to me about some creative marketing ideas and some of the things you're doing. I'm going to highlight two of them. What you do for Veterans Day and what you have highlighted from the Garden Club. And I just want to use that as maybe a starting point, and then you can take it wherever you want to take it in terms of just what creative marketing ideas do you feel like separates you, because you are the local market expert, and that's what we're here for, is to try to help everybody who's sitting here just build their own local market expertise and become the person and the resource. So could you talk to us a little bit about creative marketing?
Sure. Some of the marketing we do, I just feel like everybody should just be a tourist in their own neighborhood. So, for example, I was really moved every time I drove by, which was the old Astor Mansion, is now Town Hall. They have this thing of, what do they call it? The parade, the flag of honor. And everyone who wanted a badge for their relative can buy one. And then they have the photos of all the veterans when World War I, World War II, when they were in their 20s. So you see these young guys, young women, and it's always Veterans Day is in November, so you can hear the leaves rustling, and it's just really quiet there. And it's really what Veterans Day is. So, no offense to CB, but when you see the Happy Veterans Day or whatever it is with the CB logo, I just make videos for things like that. But honest, I would feel bad if you thought I did that to get listings. It's like a byproduct. It's just there's so many moving things. That's a lot of our marketing. And one day I was driving in, making the circle to the parking lot, and the garden club was out there. These people are incredible. Our street looks beautiful. So I just had them all pose and put it up. And then people are like, oh, I saw this, I saw that. So I think that being an expert in your local market, but being someone who isn't afraid to say why you love your town and your neighborhood on a regular basis, it draws people here. Karen on the team have backgrounds with the Board of Ed. So when buyers come in and we show them why houses got things and we show them other neighborhoods and in plain English tell them we would feel terrible if you came here and because there's no home now, you wish we told you about it and you moved here. I think that just kind of brands you to the neighborhood. And the magazines keep us consistent, even when I send them in at 11:59 p.m. after I've asked everybody to proofread them.
Sounds familiar.
But yeah, if you don't have that really good rigor, that helps. And then we're not just showing, in the connections, we'll put our listings in the middle so people know that we do actually sell homes. But everything is, where's the trend going? And another thing I got from that meeting with CB Warburg, people are watching CNN. People are calling now. How many are calling and they're saying, is it still a good market? Because they're listening to what they're hearing. And the market's been supply and demand. If everybody puts their homes on this year, the party's over. Let's face it. So I just think that our jobs are to show them why there's not many sales, because there's nothing to sell.
Yeah. So I always try to do my research whenever I sit down with somebody, and I called around to different people that know you really well, and one of them was Tracy Devine, and she loves you, so it's very highly of you. But she basically said, I was like, if there was a question that you wanted to ask Marie, what would it be that would highlight kind of what she does and, in her marketplace? And she said, one of the things that she found very profound is during COVID, what you did to promote local businesses. So I would love for you to just speak to that and, what kind of drove you at that time.
One day, literally, it was a really sunny day, and there were people in the businesses, but you couldn't kind of go in. So I just stood out in the street and said, do you mind saying good morning, Basking Ridge? Because one of the fondest memories I have is being a little kid in Park Slope and watching people sweep their sidewalks for the day. And we made that video. And then the whole town, this was not me, but someone in the town started up a collection so that we could keep the restaurants alive. And this was not I only participated. I have nothing to do with the great work they did. But we had the restaurants make meals, and Morristown Hospital's 10 minutes from us. They dropped all the food off, so we kept the restaurants open, and we did that. But we also, as much as we could get around, we supported the businesses just by making videos of them, saying if they had hours, if they were locked down, what could you do online? We had the website that had all the drugstores and hospitals, and then we did a list of restaurants that did not close for good, but you'd have to go through whatever gyrations. They put it on their site. We linked to every single restaurant in what I call our B towns, Basking Ridge, Bedminster, Bernardsville. Yeah. It really helped, and it just felt good because you're sitting there, and you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse. What could you do? So if that in some way helped.
Yeah, I realize COVID is over, certainly in that stage. My thought was, it just highlights, like, when everybody else is kind of sitting there staring at their TV, like you were taking action to try to promote those in your community. And what I've found in our conversations and our notes and everything else is exactly that. It's you're consistently taking action to try to promote your community. And I think that, you know, there are 2 points that come out of that. Is one, you very much highlighted to me, it's all about positivity. And you know how important it is to be the positive voice in your community, because we all know, we all go on these forums and we hear a lot of negativity for one reason or another. Somebody just wants to complain that day on a Facebook group, and yet you're the person that's very much like, nope, we're going to keep it positive, and here's why. So that was one of the takeaways for me. The other piece that I would add to that is, and you kind of touched upon it before, is the thought process of not putting out canned information. And you know, we all have these templates, you know, we have CRMs, and you know, there's so many different pieces of collateral that get you know, created for us in an effort to make your lives easier. And you, as a regular course of your business, kind of avoid that and take it a step further and say, no, I'm in the community doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to take that video and I'm going to make that the piece rather than, you know, just this canned, you know, product that comes out. So I'm just curious, like, I mean, I assume your feedback is better. Like, you know, that they know you're there, they know you're working in the community. Like, what do you feel, you know, for you, like, are there certain things that you have, and I know that I'm going off script here, but I'm doing this with intention. So are there certain things that you're doing from a strategy perspective? Like, I know I need to put out these posts these, you know, times of the year, or is it more along the lines of, like, as you're walking around, this is something that's lived?
It's something that's lived, and you save it. Like that poster, as you can see, if that were my listing photo, you'd tell me to go get an update because it looks like the prom picture. But I have that picture without me in it, and there's a big Presbyterian church, and there was a 600-year-old tree. And I took the picture of the flag going out, so I'm going to put that up on Memorial Day or the 4th of July and ask people, what are you doing? Make it very local instead of a picture from the White House or something that clearly looks like Colorado, and say, they just love those buildings, we're just getting to them. Why would you do that? There's so much local. I take pictures whenever I can. I'm a big supporter of music in the Somerset Hills. If I go to their concerts, I talk about it. And then I have a page on my website called Events. And during the holidays, if people are saying, so you can't promote yourself on some sites, but if people are saying, what can I do with the kiddos this weekend? I'm like, oh, here's a link. And the link drives them to my website, and when I look at the metrics, they're staying a while. Yeah. And then we have every single neighborhood in my town segregated on the website to show what the prices are for the last year. And somebody manually puts the solds in, which aren't too many the last few years, so people can see what's going on in every neighborhood.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but on the slide here where it says visit, that is her website. So if you wanted to check out the website, I put that on there. So, you know, in regards to, we talked about like being a local market expert, and I think the local part is very obvious. You're doing what you could do to, you know, be in the town and promote the positivities in the town. I would love for you to talk about the expert portion. Because when you and I, you know, got into this, like what I realized very quickly is, you know your market, there are certain things that you're looking at regularly, and you know, you talk to me almost like, hey, if I don't know these stats and I walk into a dinner party, I'm not going to be prepared. So talk to us about what you pay close attention to in regards to the market.
Well, every day, and don't think I'm neurotic, but I probably am. When I get up, I look at the MLS, how many homes are on the market. It's very easy now because there's like 23, but how many of those are single family and how many of those are condos? And then you have to remember, sellers aren't doing what I just did. They don't have a place of reference. So, whoa, in 2019, that number of 21 was 145. So this is what we're working with. And you really should know those numbers. And there was a thing that somebody from C.B. Warburg did, and he called it, the Wall Street Journal called it tornado marketing, and they were talking about that in New Jersey. And it's sort of like, why did this house get this, that house get that? Why did it pass that house on? There really are reasons. Sometimes it is just somebody lost a million bidding wars. They're coming from Montclair, and this is the house, and I don't care what it is, but good luck getting that again unless Kismet strikes again. But you need to be like the person who I was talking to. We're putting their home on lower, but again, ROI, they're making more money than the other house where they spent $1 million between the kitchen and the pool and the other upgrades. And people have to if you just say, well, I don't know, you're the same size, then they're going to say, okay, thanks, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
You know, and then they decide another direction. But every house that sells, you should know what was in it or what made it. And one of the things I love at our team is that we do sit at one big conference table. That's our little area. And we're just sharing what was this house like. We keep track of, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're very honest with our buyers and sellers what they're going to be.
I gotta tell you, like, you know, I remember, especially when I first started as a brand new agent, I felt like I learned through osmosis. Like I'd be in the office and somebody else would be talking about a piece of inventory and it would just soak into my pores. And now I had that talk track to speak to. So I definitely can relate to what you're talking about. And anybody who's not regularly in the office, like around, you know, other agents, like I would encourage you to do so. I think that that's spot on. You really do learn about inventory and you learn about, like, you know, what's coming up and what's happening in the marketplace when you're around other agents. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Kind of, I guess, a part two to the last question is, you know, you obviously have market expertise, but I think that every great agent that I've ever been in front of also has certain talk tracks. You know, there's certain dialogue that they use regularly that you know, gets people to make smart decisions for themselves. So one of the talk tracks that you and I kind of, you know, spoke about was you like to highlight the most important things that they don't know or they're not thinking about. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so when people are moving here, especially with the shortage of homes, we get a lot of Mountain Lake people. They're looking in Mountain Lakes, they're looking in Montgomery, they're looking in Basking Ridge. So if you know where people are looking, you can kind of get an idea. Then you just have to figure out what do we have that they don't have, and never say, oh, Mountain Lakes doesn't have fill in the blank. But you need to say, you know what, I grew up in the city. If they're coming from you can get on 287 or 78. It's a mile each way. You can be in Spring Lake in an hour and 15. You can be in the city, and you're not driving, say, on Route 9 or something for 3 years just to get to the highway. People like that when they're coming from a more urban. We don't have many restaurants in our town, although we're getting more, but Morristown, they're calling it Hoboken West. So to be able to show that, we have Basking Ridge Country Club, which doesn't require you to put down a big bond, and the public can go there. And I had a client who moved from Switzerland for Novartis. Chatham was closer to Novartis, and they were deciding between the house I had and another house. And I just said, oh, you know, it's kid-friendly. Go to the Basking Ridge Country Club because you can the sun will set over there. They went there and they called afterward and said, we picked Basking Ridge. Or our schools.
Yeah, just something you just said, like the Basking Ridge Country Club, and the point that you pointed out was not having to put down a large down payment to join the club. And I just think about that in all of our markets. I wouldn't know that. Like, I didn't know anything about that. You know, that's something that only a local expert would know. So just the thought process of all of us think of what are the talking points of our town, and a lot of us focus on we're a train town, you know, we're proximity to the city, we're great schools, those type of things. You're making it really local, you know, and it's something that, you know, Zillow wouldn't be able to speak to.
Right. We sponsor events, so like the Dandia Festival. We have a large international community. We sponsor the Dandia Festival at the high school every year. There's a lot that goes on with Diwali, and for people who that's important for, a lot of Hindu folks, direction is important. So, you know, fair housing, you got to mind your way through, but if somebody's like direction, we'll say, oh, is that important to you? And we'll pre-screen the homes to make sure they're not facing south. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, it's trying to find out exactly what they want, but letting them tell you for those types of issues. But it's also just what might they like? What might Charter Day? you have to come out, or it's around May 19th. You have to go out to chart a date. The whole street shuts down. There's Battle of the Bands, all the different dance classes, all the different others come out and put on a big show, and there's a beer garden at the end of the day. So I just covered kids, adults, people who don't drink, people who do drink, people who have grandchildren. You gotta like one of those.
You know, when I spoke to several people just trying to get a better understanding of what you're doing in your business and how to highlight it, I kept hearing it echoed time and time again that you have such an amazing online presence. And you do a great job with social media and all that. And I know we spoke about this earlier, and you highlighted that a lot of it is lived. Do you have a specific strategy, or is there some thought into what this looks like on a regular basis, or is it really truly like, hey, I woke up today, I saw this was going on, I took this video?
That should be the plus part. Unfortunately, sometimes when I get really busy, because I do it myself, it's also the part. So we try to show some listings. And just like we were talking today, when they're on exclusive and no one can see them, that's when I go on my Instagram and put them on. And then when we get the books done, then we put that out. So that really helps us. But I would like to do stuff every day, but then I wouldn't want to do it every day for the sake. There is an agent who's in our area, and some of the things that they post, they're getting 2 likes. I'd rather have less out and get 50 saves or shares than just the likes, because that means they're in tune with it. So I just try to mix, I won't say business with pleasure, but you try to get all your listings on so you can sell the houses. That's your big goal. But I think if you attract those people and they're saying, oh, look what happened in Basking Ridge. Oh, look at that music in the Somerset Hills. They had somebody from the Metropolitan Opera. Oh, look at this person. Paul McCartney went to our restaurant and everybody made a big deal, took a chair. So all of that stuff combined, I think you're not only getting them to want the houses that you're listing, but you're getting them to know this neighborhood and say, this is pretty cool. Like the Cross Estates in Bernardsville. It's magnificent. It's free.
I heard Paul McCartney's dating a Jersey girl. So
yes.
I'm hoping he does See Here Now this year.
She's from Edison.
So, in our conversation in prep, you used the word that I want to highlight. The word was ambassador. You are an ambassador for your clients. And, I just felt like all of us in this room, we're all in real estate. And if you were like, what do you do for a job? Most people would be like, oh, I'm a realtor, I sell houses, whatever. And then you use that word, and it just struck me. Because you really are an ambassador. You're an ambassador for your community. You're an ambassador for real estate as a whole. You're an ambassador certainly for Coldwell Banker. What does that word mean to you, and why did you use that specific language?
I think we're always ambassadors, even to ourselves. If we come off that we're so sure of ourselves, then nobody really needs us. If we come off like, oh, I just came from the gym, I'm so sore. We need to be on our game all the time. We need to be ambassadors for the town. People don't just, if it were just square footage and number of bedrooms, they wouldn't even have to home search. They could just buy them. What does this house offer? I'm an ambassador of Coldwell Banker. If I come off like a dope, that might translate to people think, oh, what a crazy company. They'd hire someone like her. And so you just have to be mindful, but you really do need to be an ambassador for the home, not just like, I hate when people go, that's a window. But you have to say, they've got receipts. They've spent $500,000, but don't you think they spent that money wisely? Open this drawer, look at the pegs and everything. Look at this oven. Look at, Sub-Zero invited us out in Parsippany to see all their latest products. They'll do dinners for people who have the Sub-Zero suite. You get people involved in that. You want to be an ambassador. If you're selling a luxury home, they darn well better feel that they're in a luxury home. So you show off those things, and it needs to be neat as a button, as they say.
When I first started in real estate, I was fortunate enough to list a very beautiful home in Summit. It was a $2 million plus home. And the seller required that I had to accompany all showings. And it was a hot property, and for like a week and a half of my life, I pretty much lived there. 2 weeks of my life, there were 75 showings of all the top agents in the area. And I got to sit there and just watch. And I tried to get out of the way and just listen to what people say. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me personally. And I'm so happy that it happened so early in my career, because I got to watch people show homes and see what they do. And I got to tell you, what you spoke to about, pointing out certain items in the home that would otherwise be missed. The better agents, that's what they do. And it's a matter of being well versed in first of all, what those things are, those stylistic choices and design choices are first, and you got to be educated to that. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's something that pointing out, oh, that's a window is a joke. But if you're talking about what type of window it is and why that has a value to it, that does bring value to your client. So I'm glad you highlighted that, because it's a simple thing that a lot of people just don't think about. I don't know if you wanted to add.
I was just going to say, we've added a page to our ebooks, and one of them is, what do the sellers like about their home? What do they like about living in Basking Ridge? And then we show all the lovey-dovey stuff up front to get the emotional value. But then there's 2 pages, here's some of the improvements. And so first fall in love with the house, and then find out the HVAC's new, the roof is new, this is new. That really is the whole picture.
Yeah.
You really have to be an ambassador.
So you lead with the love of the home, and you follow up with the stats, so to speak, or the updates. That's perfect strategy. You've been doing this for some time now at a very high level. You've been through a lot of change in the industry. I'm curious how you feel your business has evolved through the years.
It's dramatic, and that should give all of us empathy to any sellers. Because if they bought their homes before 2020, they're thinking they should be here to get here. And they're not realizing that if your house doesn't sell that weekend, you're going to get calls, are they negotiable? And that is a big story to tell. And, they had words before. The first year, 2020, my word was adaptability. And then it became resilience. And then it did become grit. And this year, and then it became velocity. You have to set this up that when those doors open, everything's ready and raring to go. You're not going to get 5 people this week, 2 people next week, 10 the following. This is what you get. And I think doing that work, you have an easier time with your sellers. That if you had 20,000 people on Zillow and 700 people opened your ebooks and 5,000 shared your things, and this is what you get pretty much, unless somebody's in a coma, in which case they're not going to be buying a house soon. You've had the public.
Yeah.
Unlike the old days. That's very hard for sellers. They're watching TV, they're watching CNN and asking you, is it still there? And then when you price lower to get higher, I would say make sure that if they get that price, and that's the only price, that they will take that price. Otherwise, you have a big problem. You put a home on for $900, you get $900, you don't get other offers because they stretched. You're in trouble then if you're going to say no. There was an old thing, it was everybody put your hands up, then put it higher. Now go the highest you can. Everybody goes up a little higher. But if you said, okay, now don't get out of your seats and touch the ceiling, no one will try. And that's, to me, the key to pricing right.
Wow. I'm just going to touch on one thing because I don't want to skim over it. You said ebooks. That's not something I'm hearing from everybody. What are you doing in terms of ebooks?
We make them ourselves. We R&D'd it from someone in California, and we basically figured out what our theme is, what we want to do. We make them, and there's just a lot of interactivity attached to them. Again, we have a very large international community. People are sending things to Switzerland, to India, to China, to Indiana. They can look at them right on the spot.
Nice. The final question I have, and then we'll turn it over to the audience, but I think that especially newer agents, they let's just say they hit failure in some way. They feel like, oh my God, the world is ending. And what I realize is the more I'm around successful people, the more they've failed a million times over and adapted and figured it out, and that's what made them as successful as they are. So I would just love to hear, is there something that you failed on that you feel like this taught me?
How long do you have?
How long do you have? Is there something, and it doesn't have to be a specific example, but just more of where do you feel for those, or brand new in real estate, what that journey looked like for you.
Well, I remember when I started and I had floor time and I had a little Dunenberg satchel and I left it in the office and you had fobs and I had to use Magellan and I took this lady's totally out of her way and then I realized I didn't have the fobby thingy and I had to go back and needless to say I never heard from her again. So
I've done the exact same thing, I'm not gonna lie. It's true.
And I think the biggest mistakes that you could grow and learn from, I mean, those are just like silly things you do and you'll never do that again. But I think the thing is, as someone said up here before, you need to listen to people. And I think we don't own the houses we're selling, we're servicing. So what we're doing is taking away their pain points. So if you can, so when they close and they say, I didn't know that was all involved, that's what you need to get across. And if you make a mistake, and I have done things where I've sent someone a text message and then you get distracted and you didn't hit the send, and then you go to see why they didn't call you back and you see your message is still sitting there. I will call them and say, I'm really sorry, I was an idiot, I just saw this now, and I apologize instead of...
Talking about me?
And we all do it instead of saying, oh, it must have gone to spam. Well, text messages don't go to spam unless you're blocked. So just like own up and move on, and I will continue to be doing that probably for the rest of my life. Or you just, something slips your mind. Just say, I'm really sorry, not, you know, I had to save somebody's life on the Garden State Parkway.
All right, well, first of all, I really appreciate you taking this time. I would love to open it up to the audience. I'm sure there's a lot of people, I see a hand go up right away. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to ask you questions, so let's just do that. God bless you.
Hi, Marie.
Hi.
I love what you said about be the tourist in your neighborhood, because I've always said be the mayor, right? So be the tourist, I think, is even better because you're adding that. I think also as agents, we lose focus on what it is to move, right? It's strenuous, it's headache, it's one of the top 3 stresses in life. How do you prepare your sellers and your buyers to make that easier for them?
Well, I do have a garage full of fire extinguishers that we don't need anymore since they dropped that law. But we tell them we'll help them every step of the way, and we really do. We show them what needs to be done. We bring in a stager who will come in for a consult, give them a list of the personal things, and then she'll come back and do it. We work on their timelines, and sometimes their timelines crash with their own timelines because they want to be here. But I do think it's very important that we help them get ready. And I think the best training for that really was when I left Connecticut. I was sitting on a mattress in Costco during the inspection, and I realized I need to go buy false nails because I bit them all off. So you just really need to have the empathy and think of when you move. Think of a move. I'm sure we all had moves where we didn't want to move. What was that like? And then think of it when we wanted to move. It was probably as stressful. So help them get ready, show them why that's important, and do whatever it is you can. We get the certificate of records clearance, like a C of O for them. We help check their permits. We do as much as we can, and they seem to jump up and do the rest. And then we're there for them for the bad news. I think it was Chris Voss always said, if you have bad news, call up and say I have bad news, and tell them the bad news, but then have a solution.
Question. What other questions? You were that good? Oh, I got a couple back here.
Or that
One
bad,
and
Nick,
two.
can't wait to eat.
I'll be right back with you.
Hi, Marie. I'm from Federal Bank Heathrow office. My name is Malini Rao. There are 2 things I want to ask. Which of the Federal Banker tools you use on the CP desk to promote your business? And I have another one to ask after you finish this.
I do use the area reports. I think they're great. I do use some of the digital things, but I also take things and rework them. And Moxie Present is great. It really puts all the houses in perspective. They could look at it anytime they want. And we've added some of our own creativity to it because it is that malleable that I think Moxie is a really good tool, Moxie Present.
Thank you. Now, the second is coming from the observation when we spoke. You brought it up. The direction is important for Hindus, which is true. But I had a joke with my clients too, many of them are first-time homeowners, first-time home buyers. If a house is sitting in the market for a long time, and in certain, I'm not going in detail because of the housing laws and all, but probably their direction is not suitable to certain people. And knowing very well that south is said, right? South-facing houses have
The Vastu.
Sun coming inside, the house will be bright. But still, some people don't want to buy it for the reason, requirement of the direction. Then, how do we convince those people? I know, we can't go against their beliefs. Some cultural experience or cultural understanding of different cultures will also help while we do our business, I guess.
Yeah, I never try to convince anyone of anything because, as one person did tell me, if my grandmother won the Nobel Peace Prize, died at 120 peacefully, but my house faced south, and I lived there 20 years, I'm going to get blamed for it. So I have very deep respect for every cultural difference, and if somebody says no, as far as I'm concerned, that's a no. That's a hard no, and I would never want someone to be uncomfortable. There's not plenty of houses to go around all at once, but there's more than likely that model will come up and it'll be across the street. I just feel like we have to respect everyone. You start pushing it, they're going to start running.
Yeah, please.
Hi, over here. Hi, my name is Mary. I appreciate your presentation because you come across so genuine.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
I'll take it.
Because you are an experienced agent, I would be very interested to know, how are you speaking to your sellers right now about the buyer commission? I'm showing them the whole thing of how it works in compliance, with the laws. So there are certain towns where they'll say, well, what's trending? And I'm like, I'll tell you what's trending, but it is not a standard. You can do this yourself if you'd like to. There's someone in our town who was always like a discount realtor. I'm like, you could go to them, and that's usually when they sign with us. But I am telling them that I don't think the dust has settled. And I think if I start seeing something trending in your favor, I will let you know. Right now in our town, I give them my fee and I'm getting it. But if they're asking, well, what is it? Is it still 6%? That's usually someone that doesn't know it, and I won't say yes because it's a small town. But I am telling people, you can do nothing. You can do this. You can do Priceline, which seems to be big in Mendham. People will write in what they want, and you could do it. But in my experience, I'm finding that if people are in Basking Ridge offering around 2%, the buyers are feeling a little relieved, and you may be saving yourself money from someone asking for more, or you may get more. But I think if you're a hard no, then they're saying, okay, that's another bit of money I have to bring to the closing, and I'm not sure that would work in your favor, or maybe it would, because we really cannot tell people anything of what to do, but we can tell them what's going on and we'll let you know how it's working. You just have to be so compliant with the laws.
Another question?
I hope that helps.
Marie, thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you, you too.
I'm happy to have got to know you a little bit better today. It was a blessing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Dave. To everyone in the room, make sure you review your notes and take action on at least one thing she's doing. But question for you, obviously, you're great at what you do, you have experience, you figured out a way to get this job done in, you know, as a master of your craft, right? And you enjoy it. If you, I don't need to be on the spot, but if you had to think of, say, you know, 3 or 5 people that have been key to your business, say in the last 3 years, people that you rely on, because obviously you're a big part of this. You're the biggest part. What are those key players in your business that help you manage your business and help you?
I will tell you what really helped us double my business the first year was signing on with Debbie Holloway at Tom Ferry. Because instead of, and I remember the lockdown like it was yesterday, although many days it's Blur's Day, they came on with Jason Pantana and said, if you go on and get out of business now, go tell everybody everything's fine, we're doing great, when do you want to list your house? If you don't want to get out of business, stop selling real estate right now and go ask people how you can help them. Go check on the older people, and you should be doing that even if you weren't in real estate. And all those little connect the dots they did. Someone said earlier today, they didn't teach you how to sell real estate. They taught you how to behave and what to do. And that's a game changer for me, as is Jason Pantana. I went to his thing because you really get the idea of Instagram in terms of like local people in the last 4 years. We've changed our team dynamic a little bit and we're going all out. This is no longer a one-person job. We were acting like a law firm. We all had our own practices. We all had our own clients. We helped when it was needed. Now we're talking to clients and we're showing them it's not where if you hire us, take my picture because you'll never see me again, but it's more, you're going to need a lot of help. And if we're going to be showing your home on the weekend, and then we have to show buyers your home on the weekend, I'd like you to meet everyone and know what they are, but know that I'll be with you. And the folks on my team have been nothing but a wonderful support. I know that might sound small, but between Tom Ferry with Debbie Holloway and the connections here, I learned something from everybody every day. It's just listening to it and realizing that you have an open mind so you could always be better. There's really no one person. I mean, I thank God for my husband who's like, you're on the phone again. But seriously, the support from the team and the guidelines, and I wish I were more consistent. And when I got Follow-Up Boss, that helped. But you're like my idol for doing things that way in the morning. I'm a little more on the fly because of what life throws at you. But truly, Will, it's just been everybody's support. It's been staying at Coldwell Banker where I've gotten tremendous support. And the team we've just have really gelled because we've really been through the ringer. I mean, we spent all day Monday helping somebody stage because we had Tuesday to do all the videography, photography, and everything else, and we darn well did it. And it's just a good feeling. But we're blessed to have this group.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you.
So I have a question for you. So with this, inclining market, when you sit with your seller and you discuss your pricing strategy, and they say to you, well, where do you think it's going to end? How do you respond to that? Because what I heard, I think you price it a little more aggressive.
Yes.
So that you leave room and. So,
Yes.
I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. But
No.
So what is your response?
There was the guy from Ogilvy and Mathers, and this is what I mean, Will, you just pick these things up, you don't even know where, but the Ogilvy and Mathers leader, the big PR firm, said, you cannot convert an empty church. And if you want people to come to your house and you have buyers who don't want to sign agreements and you have this going on, have it to be a great price. But I also try to tell sellers, you think your take on this is buyers are so desperate they'll pay anything for my house. I'm going to tell you, buyers are so beaten up after losing 5 and 10 bidding wars, they may not even come because it's like, here's another one. So we need to price your house correctly. And again, we'll get you the exposure and the reach. But if this is what you get, this is what you're getting. And if you're not going to take that price, tell me now. Because if we adjust it within a week, I'm sure you're all getting calls. I see you're on the market. Are they negotiable?
Guys,
So
what a
it's
talk
fine
track.
tuning.
you cannot convert an empty church is probably the best thing you could ever say to a seller about price. It's really smart. It's smart. Thank you for that. I'm going to use that for the rest of my career. Questions? No? Listen, I really appreciate you. I think that, I don't know who said it, somewhere over here, about you just being such a genuine person, and that's certainly reflected here. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I'll leave you with the last word.
I just really want to say thank you, and I'm grateful, and I'm going to be very honest with you. When I saw everyone get up and the questions are going, I'm like, oh my God. So thank you. We all do our best.
Thank you so much. So please don't get up. Please don't get up. We have one more thing, and we're still running super early, but I would love to welcome the YPN up. Thank you so much, Marie. If you guys could come up. I wanted to...
What?